Yeah. Um, I shared in the beginning of the show that I made some massive mistakes, right? Um, honestly, one mistake cost me literally $1 million, and most people want to know about that. So happy to share with you about that. Um, the published piece is a massive piece because statistically, 81% of all Americans at one time or another have thought about writing a book. Perhaps that's true with you, or perhaps it will be true with you, but 8 out of 10 Americans. And that's probably true across the whole first world. About 1/4% ever do. So why is there this massive disparity between those that want to and those that actually do? There's two reasons. Number one, they don't know what to write about because maybe they're an expert and they're thinking, well, do I write my story? How specific do I get? Whatever. And the other issue is they don't know how to write it. So those two things stop the 80+% from actually getting it done. So you have to deal with the whole, how do I get this book out of me, and how do I write the correct book to attract my ideal client? That's what the published piece is all about.
Yeah, so you're really going deeper. I mean, when a lot of people think about publish, they just think about, okay, publisher and boom, my book is out. But really what you're talking about is that whole beginning piece that ends up in the publish step, right?
That's right. Yeah, I like continuity, so I had to have 3 Ps, right? Publish, promote, and profit. So yeah, the published piece, the phase, what we call it the published phase, actually constitutes from going from nothing, no book, even no idea, all the way to having a completed manuscript that, is edited with a cover and that's published and is a physical version, digital version, ISBN numbers, everything. So yeah, that whole phase encompasses that.
Interesting. So let me ask you a question. We have a lot of coaches, a lot of speakers who watch the
Yep.
show, and a lot of
Right.
them say they don't see themselves as authors because while they have great material, they can't think about what they're gonna write about. What's one piece of advice you could give somebody right now if they don't know if they have anything to write about or figure out how to figure out what to write about?
Yeah, great. Well, the number one thing that they need to do is they need to consider exactly what the needs are of their ideal client, their audience avatar, we call it. And, if they don't know what to write about, they certainly know who they want to serve, I would hope. If they don't, then they're probably just hand to mouth and trying to figure out their business. You have to know who you want to serve, and it has to be narrow. So with the book, the first place we start is, we dive deep into 2 things. We dive deep first into 5 years from now, who do you want to be serving? And how do you want to be serving that individual? And who do you want your book to be attracting to you? Once we figure that out, we then dive deep into the psyche of that person. What is that person's fears, worries, aspirations, desires? What benefits can you bring to that person's life? That becomes the hook, the title, the subtitle, and the table of contents for the book. So the book is completely constructed with the idea of I am serving this person that I want to be working with that brings me inner fulfillment, income, and impact is what we talk about. When you figure that out, then the rest of it flows. It's not that difficult.
Epic. I mean, that is, it's interesting because really what you're saying is you start with the end in mind,
Totally.
and starting with the end in mind isn't a dirty thing. I think a lot of coaches, a lot of speakers are afraid to start with the end in mind because then they feel they're guiding people along the way, or they're kind of, a little bit, icky. I don't want to say icky, and I don't really know why they feel that way. I mean, I think I did at one point, but I'm not really sure why. But it's the only place to start, because if you don't know your end result, you can't craft a good book and a good journey to get your ideal
Sure.
client there, right?
Yeah, and there are 2 ends. There's the end for you, and there's the end for your client. The end for you is just as important, right? My first book was on financial services. Do I do any financial services today? No. Now, it got me to where I am today, but the reality is I don't serve that client anymore. I was on my account earlier today. That book still sells all over the world. It sold 40,000 times. But you know what? If people wanted me to help them with the financial services, I'd say, I don't really know much about it anymore. I can't help them. So, you have to think about what end it is that you want as best you can, and you can figure that out. You can dive deep and figure that out. And then once you figure that out, you move on to that individual that you want to serve, and what is their end? How do you want to help them? How can you benefit them? When you have those things together, you can write a book that you can literally build a business around for the next 20 or 30 years if you want.
Yeah, epic. Or it can lead to something else in a different industry, like it has for you.
If you change your mind, sure.
So during the publish phase, one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is that ideal client avatar, and we talked a little bit about it today. Give our audience maybe the first step that they can go through, or the first step that you would take a client through into identifying that ideal client avatar.
Our first step is what we call our author market questionnaire, and the author market questionnaire is a deep dive into that audience avatar. So there are 4 things that we look at, and that our clients need to think deeply about their ideal client. And I mentioned them, but they are the wants and desires, the aspirations, which is different than a desire on the positive side, and then on the negative side, the fears and the worries of their ideal client. What are the things that are keeping them up at night? And if they can dive deep and figure those things out, the next step then is, how do you benefit that individual? Not the features of what you do. Well, in my coaching program, we're going to get together once a week and we're going to talk on the telephone. Who cares about that? I don't need another appointment. I need to fix something. So we want them to speak in terms of benefits, and how do those benefits fit into the needs, the wants, the desires, the aspirations, the fears, the frustrations of their ideal client. When those things fit together, then you got magic. You got an immediate hook, an immediate attraction. And I know some of this is just kind of marketing stuff, but books are bought on titles and covers. So, you have to hook somebody right out of the gate, and you've got to be speaking in their language, or they're not going to get it. They're not going to get why they need you.
Exactly, because people do judge a book by its cover. I mean, that's
totally.
That
you
is.
Do, I do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and by the way, it's funny because I want to say something to the audience before we get into the promote segment. We're going to get into the promote segment second. Rob, as you can tell, I'll say he's coming across to me as very humble, like, oh, this is just common sense. What he's giving you is epic gold here, guys. I mean, because if you listen to what he's saying when he's talking about the avatar, it's not the typical how old and yada, all the rhetoric and the shtick that everybody else who tells you how to create an avatar is going to tell you. He's talking about wants, desires, needs, and talking about the things that really are the things that are really gonna make a difference. And my hope for all of our viewers is that you're listening to what Rob is saying and take it into your heart so that you can get over that block of creating your ideal client avatar. I know it stopped me for many years from creating a book and doing a lot of other things. And hope, I wish I would have been here listening to Rob 2-3 years ago, because I would have gotten over my block on my ideal client a whole lot quicker, because once you understand, and I think, Rob, you would agree, once you understand the feelings and all the things you can interact with, all the other stuff that people tell you about your ideal client can be based, can kind of come off of, can kind of grow off of that. But it's almost like you almost can't do it the other way around, or at least it's much more difficult. Let's get into promote, because we got to get to profit, man. My brain is going, we got to get to profit, baby. But let's get into promotes.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.